if we've got nothing else, we might push on and get started on our losses in the machine themselves. And welcome Kassie and Brett Asfar from WA. Brett's a case specialist. He works at Terminator now. He's been joining us all week. And Ben, you hang around for a bit as well to answer questions as they come up.
I'll hang around. I've got another 5-10 minutes, mate. Yep, no worries.
No worries at all. So today we'll probably start on the John Deere side of things with Kassie. So we've got who's bought their machine on, Jono? Yeah. Do you want to use a bit of background on what your machine's at the back there?
Yes, S670 with Terminator attached. Newer Terminator, it's only 12 months old, or is it the older one? Just
New one.
No, new one. It's the newer one, so it's had a Terminator on for 12 months.
Any issues, challenges you're facing with losses that you know of, or capacity?
Yeah, it doesn't have enough capacity. I've never driven the one ahead of it does have enough capacity yet. But, yeah, we've got the Terminator on it. Kassie has helped us out with it on the first year, helped us out a fair bit, get it all set up. We've done the braking plates on the left-hand side to spend a fair bit of time on that, getting it set up, getting the grain panel loading up evenly. Not sure what else.
No, that's right, that's perfect. Anyone else with John Deere got any challenges they're facing right now that Kassie can address immediately? Or we'll get into his little spiel, which is quite interesting, and we can talk about it later. Kassie, might just go with you. Apparently you've worked on this machine.
No dramas. I can see some faces there that I know that I've been to my training schools before, my harvester schools. So yeah, most of you would know my history. I've been with Case for a few years, and then I'm currently working for Goldacres for the last year. Before that, I was working for our dealership, John Deere dealership here in town. For the last 4 years that I was with John Deere, that was my job, is to go out and check harvest loss and to set machines up and sit with customers and owners and operators and make sure that we set it up the way that we want and the way that we can, so the machine is getting the best performance for you, whether it comes to productivity and efficiency. The way that I see it is, you don't cut back when you put the seed in the ground. You don't cut back when you go and spray it. You don't cut back on the urea that you put on the machines, on the crops. So why does it, when you get to harvest, why are you happy with 80 or 90 or 95% of the crop that you're harvesting and leave the rest in the ground? So that's what I've been chasing for, is go and make sure that you get as close to 100% of the material into your box. At the end of the day, you're the one that benefits for it, or benefits from it. Something that I've seen in our area is everyone has got a date where they want to be finished with their seeding, whether it's the 20th of May or whatever the date might be. You've got that cutoff date where all your seed needs to be in the ground to get your maximum performance. And I think that scenario has shifted over to our harvest as well. Everyone has got a cutoff date for that. Not everyone, sorry, but most people have got a cutoff date for the harvest, whether you want to be finished by the 20th of December or Christmas time or New Year's or middle of January, whatever it might be. You've got a cutoff date for where you want to be finished with your harvest. With that cutoff date, it's a little bit of a scenario that gets set in with dramas. You can't go at 5k an hour. You want to go at 10k an hour. As long as there's material coming into the box, we're happy with it. We don't spend time to jump out of the machine and go and have a look at what our machine is doing. Very important to go out and have a look what our machine is doing. You guys would know, that's been to my classes before, that I keep on saying that our harvester is a little factory, and we can set that factory up to work with 40 tons of grain that comes into our box at 10k an hour. And as soon as we push that stick forward to 12k an hour, something needs to give. Something is not going to have the same result as what you have at 10k an hour. So whether you need to open up your concaves, whether you need to speed your rotor up, whether you need to put your wind up in the machine, something needs to happen, because you can't have your little factory that's happy at 8k an hour, or say 8k an hour, all of a sudden you push it to 12k an hour and you expect the same from the machine. You've got to think about it. If you are harvesting 40 or 50 tons an hour at 10k an hour, the material that comes into the machine, say for instance, that's 80 ton an hour if you get 40 tons of grain out of it. So all of a sudden you push your stick forward from 8 to 12k an hour, that's a 50% increase. So all of a sudden you go from 120 ton an hour to 180 ton an hour. So something in your machine you need to adjust to make sure that you can handle that. Don't just sit in your machine, you do the settings for the morning and think that you can go through all day and all night with that same settings. It is possible, but your losses, something's going to give. Your losses is going to go more. Your grain quality that you get in the box might be cracked or unthreshed. So we need to have a look at that and set it up accordingly. I was fortunate enough with the job that I was doing here over the last few years that a few customers has given their machines to me and say, right, you can come and play with it. Just don't make it worse, but you can do whatever you like on it. So probably 95% of the work that I've done was on the S-series machines. And I've got to say that all the adjustments and all the changes that I've made is predominantly for S-series machines. Some of the changes we have made on the 9770s, on the 70 series machines, but their sieve area is much shorter than on the S-series machines. So we had way different results on them. So what I'm saying today is mostly of our work we've been done on the S-series machines, the S680s, 670s, whatever it is, we've worked with it. As you guys know, our area is known for lucerne seed, and lucerne seed is a pretty hard thing to harvest. So it's hard to get out of the pod, and because once you've got it out of the pod, the lucerne seed itself is about half the size of a canola seed. So it gives you some difficulty to getting it out of the pod. And then when you want to separate it with the wind and the sieves, there's another challenge in our hands to separate those two. So when I was doing work on the lucerne, I've realized that we need to do some changes on our rotor area, our threshing area, our rotor, our concaves. One thing that I think we are doing good enough in the Johnny machines is the threshing part of it. Like with the drop trays that I've had in the past, every time that I pick that tray up, I wouldn't see any heads that's halfway threshed out. Like the heads are clean. So that gave me confidence to say, all right, whatever you guys are doing in the threshing part of it, that is good enough. And I know that there's a lot of people with different opinions about concaves, whether they've got the small and then the 25 wire and then the 15 wire at the back. There's a lot of different opinions about that. But what I need you to take home from this is what you are doing is good enough. We can see that there's no grain left in the heads. Challenges that we've seen is something like red wheat. That's really hard to get the husk off of it. I've done some trials with that where I've put the helical concaves into it. That helped quite a fair bit, up to a stage where we would say, yep, that is good enough. But then I've also, on that same day, we've taken the helical concave out of the machine and we've put the 31 wire concaves back in. That's got the interrupter bars all the way from left to right. So you double your fishes, really doubling the size of what your concave is, the threshing area in your concave. So with the helical bars, I've seen some great results in it. And then something else that we've done on the lucerne is to put the dense back rotor elements in. So it's gone from 15 elements to 24 elements. And we've done some tests around the Francis area where in your grain pan, the pods of the lucerne is 100% clean. There's no seed still sitting in the pods. I think that's something as a lucerne grower that we always overlook is we have a look at the seed that you can see on the ground, but you really pick up a pod and open that up and see what seed is left in the pod. So that was great results that I had with the 9 extra elements. Our concaves that we've got in, John Deere has changed their point of view on the concaves a few years ago. They would suggest that you use your 3 small wire concaves in just about everything. apart from beans and lupins and your pulse crops. But on the cereals, stick with your small wire concaves. I think what I've come to the conclusion with all the tests that I've done is in your threshing area, if we take all the covers off the machine and we look at the machine, we look at the rotor, what we see is we see the concaves, we see the separator grates, and we see the rotor. What I've seen with the work that I've done in the past, we need to determine the threshing area, and then we need to determine the separation area. So in the threshing area, we want to hit it as hard as what we can. And then we go to the separation area at the back of that, and there we want to leave it alone as much as what we can. So we've spoken about the front part of it, hit it as hard as possible. I would suggest to have the small wire concaves in there. Doing the small wire concave in there, you prevent all the straw and the chaff and all the bits that you don't want, you prevent that from falling through onto your conveyor augers. So you keep that into the rotor cage, that goes out through the discharge beater, and you don't need to work with that again. If you get all that material that goes through onto your conveyor augers, it goes onto your sieves, you need to work with it, you need to separate it. It goes back into your repeats, it comes back into your rotor. So you're just making more and more work for yourself. I said my favorite saying for this week was, it's like a flat tire that you get into your ute or your tractor, whatever. You pump it up in the mornings, you go and work all day. Tomorrow morning when you get back to it, it's flat again. So you need to pump it up, you go and work all day. The next day when you get back to it, it's flat again. It's going to stay flat all the time until you fix the problem. Until you get the repairers out, they fix that tire for you, you pump it up and everything is right. You can work with it. It's the same with your header. When the chaff and the straw and everything is onto your sieves, the ones that you don't want, why fix it with your wind or your sieve or your bottom sieve settings? Treat it at the start of it, treat it at the rotor. Put your smaller concaves in it so you can separate it and you can throw it out into the paddock. So fix the problem where the origin of the problem is. Don't try to fix it with your fan and with your sieves at the back. So now we go over to our separation area. I was sitting in a 680 combine a few years ago, and on the older machines, we could split the grain loss that's on the sieves. So I had a look at this machine and we could see that the right-hand side of the sieves are getting no grain loss and the left-hand side of the sieves are getting heaps of grain loss. Peter said before that these machines need to be fed. So we need to keep it full inside so it can do its job. That grain on grain work, the grain on grain separation. So my first initial thought when I saw that the right-hand side has got no grain loss and the left-hand side's got grain loss, my first initial thought was we're not getting enough material onto our right-hand side. Our right-hand side is lacking for grain loss. And I think some of you guys have said there before, if you go back next year to your paddock, you can see that one side of the machine in the windrows is more grain than the other side. So this is where it came in. I could see that one side is overloaded more than the other. Just the very next day, I went out to a 770 machine where we had to pull the top and bottom sieve out. As you know, with the new machines, the sieves are painted nice and black. We took the top sieve out, and as soon as we got it out, the right-hand side of the top sieve was nice and shiny. There was no more paint on it. The left-hand side of the sieve was nice and black. All the paint was still sitting on it. So we took the bottom sieve out, and again, the same story. The right-hand side of the sieves were nice and shiny. Left-hand side of the sieves, we hardly touched the paint on that side. So then the penny dropped from the previous day. We sitting in the header, looking at the machine, looking at the grain loss, I realized that we are loading our right-hand side up to the way that it should be loaded up. So the wind is lifting all the material up, all the grains are falling down, and we get rid of the chaff and the straw over the sieves. Our left-hand side is not loaded up enough, so that is sufficient. Effectively, your wind is up too high because it's blowing everything over the back, blowing over the sieves, over the top sieve. So that left me with two scenarios. One, I've either got to cut the wind down on the left-hand side of the machine, or I've got to get the load up onto the left-hand side of the machine a bit more. And that's what Jonathan said before. I've made some changes on it. I've taken the row of separated grates on the left-hand side of the machine out. I've cut every second finger of them out and put them back in and went and did a test on it. The test results that came back was phenomenal. Like we've had, we were in about 10 ton a hectare of wheat. We would do a drop tray catch. The drop tray was 1/2 square meter. And with a non-modified separated grates, we would get about 12.5 grams of grain into that 1/2 square meter. So with the separated grates, we would take them out, put the modified ones in, we would go and harvest, and that loss would fall down to 1.5 grams per square meter. So every time that I do a test like that, and there was hundreds of tests that I've done on different parts of the machine that I've changed, we do it a few times just to confirm it, because sometimes you can just get a good luck or a bad luck reading. So to confirm it, we've taken the modified ones off again, we put the factory ones back on, and again, bang, like that, our grain loss monitors in the cab was up on the rotor loss, and done the drop tray, and we've got 12.5, 13 grams of grain sitting in the back. So we've put the separated grates, the modified ones back in, the losses would drop quite significantly. So then the question came about overloading the sieves by letting too much material through onto our sieves. Again, remember, this is on an S-series machine. The bottom sieve on the S-series machine is as big as what the top sieve on the 70-series machine was. So we can't do these tests or do these modifications onto a 70-series machine. So the question came up about overloading the sieves. Aren't we overloading the sieves? But when I went back to the parts manuals of the S-series machine, you can actually go and buy those separated grates. I think it's a tough crop cereal, tough crop grate that they talk about in the books, and the fingers of the separated grates are much longer. So the gap that you've got for the material to come out is already much bigger because the fingers are longer. I got a mate down here in Bordertown who's got a 9.90 New Holland. I went out and had a look at his machine. I've measured the separation area of that New Holland machine, and that was twice as big as what the John Deere was. So that put another feather in my cap, saying that, yep, I'm on the right track. We need to get that separation area as big as possible, open it up as much as possible. Something that you can do that's not going to cost you any money is you'll have a look at your separator grates. There's a short little spacer that's sitting in on top of the separator grate. So the bolts for the separator grates will actually go through that spacer. Take that spacer out and put it in between the rail of the header and the separator grate, so you can take those separator grates away from the rotor. So while you're doing that, you just gives the rotor, the cereal, more time, or the crop more time to fall through your separator grates. If everything is cramped up, it will just go through your discharge beater and throw it out the back. So that is a quick and easy fix just to get your separator area a little bit more relaxed and not so cramped up. So two areas, keep it in mind, two areas: your separation area, which you want to have open and fluffy as possible, your threshing area where you want to have everything as tight as possible and knock that grain as hard as what you can to get it out. Another benefit of using the small wire concave while you keep everything in there is you can have your rotor gap or your concave gap, you can have that larger than what you had before. The bigger the concave gap, and I know Brett will talk about this as well, the bigger the concave gap, the faster you can go, the more material you can get into the machine. So that's a couple of things that I've seen. And then when it comes to the top sieve or the sieve area, what I've seen is most of the machines that's out there, and I would say 98% of the machines that's out there, the pre-chaffer on the machine is welded. So it's sitting in one spot, it's welded. There's about a 25 mil gap for the material to come through, and that's fixed. You can't change it. On the cases and on the New Hollands, you can adjust that pre-chaffer. You can change it like a top or bottom sieve. So that's another test that I've done in the past, is we would chuck that pre-chaffer out, we would put an adjustable chaffer in there, and then I would go out with my drop tray again. With it all the way open, we would catch, we would measure the grain, and then we will slowly close it down. And our best results that we've got is you adjust that pre-chaffer about the same as what your bottom sieve is set at. So if you've got your bottom sieve set at 6, you adjust that pre-chaffer to be at 6 instead of the 25 mils where it's sitting at the moment. So again, I can take back my story saying, instead of pumping up your wheel, go back to the source of the problem, fixing it up. If you change that pre-chaffer, immediately you get rid of a lot of straw and chaff that you don't want to go back into the repeats. The more it goes back into the repeats, the more material is in there, the more horsepower your machine will take and the less you can take into the front of it. So that is just a couple of things that I've seen in the past, and I'm very passionate about the headers, and I love running around doing the test sampling and doing the weights and measurements. So yeah, that's a couple of tips that I can put out to you guys. It's not going to cost you a hell of a lot of money. So yeah, give that a go and see how you get on.
Has anyone got any questions for Kassie? There's a bit of information to take in, but anyone got any thoughts or questions that we'd like to put forward at this stage?
Yeah, Kassie, would you be recommending then people with John Deere's take that set planer out and buy one of the aftermarket adjustable lever ones then?
Can you just repeat that, Tom?
The people with the John Deere harvesters with the pre-set welded pre-cleaner chaffer, would you recommend taking them out and buying one of the aftermarket lever pre-cleaners put in?
Yes, Al, I would. And it doesn't necessarily have to be aftermarket, like the John Deere will sell them.
Yeah, just a question for you, Kassie. We have a case header 8120, and probably in canola, I have the biggest trouble in probably having too many repeats. You find that if you get too many repeats, that then overload your right-hand side of your sieve, and as you explained before, you then get an overloaded right-hand sieve and an underloaded left-hand side of the sieve.
You, Brett.
Yeah, Brad, do you want to take that?
You've got to look at the two machines in isolation, guys. The way that the repeat system on a John Deere and the way the repeat system on a Casework are marginally different, or well, I'll say slightly different because of the way that they deliver the grain. Typically, a Case machine will load the left-hand side of the sieve anyway. And if you've got so many repeats that it's loading the right-hand side, you want to try and find the reason for that. Don't try and tune where it goes and how it goes. Try and tune what's going into your repeats. I'll talk a little bit about repeats when I get to the Case bit, but yeah, hope that helps. Keep going.
Anyone else want to give Kassie on Johns?
Just on the repeats, the repeats for me was a very good indication of what's going on in the machine. So we can have a look in the box and see what's going on in the box, but you really can't stick your head into the machine and have a look what's going on in the guts of it. So the only way that you can really look at that is to open up your repeats and have a look what's going on in your repeats. That will tell us a hell of a lot of stories of what's going on, whether you're hitting it too hard the first time, whether you're not hitting it hard enough, whether there's broken heads. The repeats is very important for me, and I've got to say, I haven't seen a lot of people that would open up that repeats door and go and have a look and see what's going on in the repeats. That will tell you a lot of stories. I always say to people, that's the blood test for me of the machine. Is, you know, you can have a look at the machine on the outside and the inside, what's going on, but really to get to the bottom of the performance of it, your repeats is very important to me.
Kassie, can I ask a question? What should we be looking for ideally in our repeats? What should they be?
I would say if you get heads that's unthreshed, that's a good thing. If you get a lot of cracked or broken grain in it, then we know we are doing something wrong. The repeats are there to exactly for what it's saying. It's a repeating. It goes back into the rotor. Depends which harvester you've got, whether you got a class 7 or 8 or 9. It works differently on different ones, but the main focus of it is it wants to take that grain again and give it another go, have another crack at it to get it back into your box. So I would say if you do get unthreshed heads in there, that's fine. That's the way that you've got a repeat system on your machine. If you've got cracked grain or cracked beans or cracked lupins on it, then you know you're hitting it too hard. Go back to the source and fix it up there.
Thanks, Cass. Anyone else got anything to go with Cass?